Welcome to World of Monsters. I'm Monster Master Arthur. So if you were to ask me right after the movie, Arthur, how was the movie? I would have said I enjoyed it. It was really fun. Saying it was enjoyable doesn't mean it's a good movie. And being a fan of the character, I think makes me somewhat biased candidate to do a full-out review. It's very comparable to Spawn in that it's a character with very similar attributes to it. But there are some things I didn't like that I liked in, for example, Spawn more. And if you haven't watched Spawn, I really recommend it, especially for comparing with Venom, and if you're gonna like Venom. So overall, music-wise, I preferred what they did with the Spawn one. Was a bit more to the taste and feel of the movie, not trying to be trendy and modern, but rather fitting the artistic aesthetic feel that the film was trying to portray. Okay, so now music aside, Venom is PG-13. There's no blood at all, I believe, not at least violent action blood. There is a scene where he is impaled completely through, Eddie Brock is, and no blood around the symbiotic blade. Now, along those lines, finding out it's PG-13, we also found out that the movie does not feature Spider-Man because of licensing issues with Sony. We found that out long ago, and you know what? That's fine, because we already knew that. Okay, if they released the movie and we didn't know that, then we'd be like, where the hell's Spider-Man? This doesn't make sense with the plot. But we knew that, so they did what they could with it. I completely understand that and accept that. They already bought the license, they own Venom, they can still come up with a good story, right? But did they? I'm not sure about that. It wasn't the greatest story. It wasn't that creative. So Venom's form is cool. It's a CGI fest, right? It's fully CGI, but the design, it was fine. It did it justice. No problem there. I love the crocodile teeth they gave him. Venom looked awesome. I'll just say that. But then there's this silliness to him that a lot of people critique really badly. This is another thing that people miss out on, is Venom is kind of silly. He's a symbiote. He's a foreigner to this world, and he does talk a lot with Eddie Brock, and they communicate, and that's one of the beauties. That's why I fell in love with the Venom. That's why we have a whole playlist on this channel to Venom. It's that interesting psychological connection and diversity between Eddie Brock and Venom, or the Venom symbiote and whatever host it combines with. So there can be a bit of that silliness, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. I actually enjoyed it, but it could have been a hell of a lot better with better writing. 40 minutes got cut out of the movie. When we left the movie, we felt like it was short. So that's a good thing. We actually wanted it to be longer, and it was already over 2 hours, right? But it seems they cut out a lot of stuff. So I think an extended version of this movie could make for a completely different movie. So I do think a lot of important key parts in the plot, in many aspects of the movie, were cut out, but some maybe should have been cut out or just redone. There's no good in-depth explanations of character connections between Venom or even with his lady friend that just appears at certain crucial moments in the movie. And I'm not saying the actors or actresses were bad, because Tom Hardy's great. She seems to have done to the best of her ability with what they were given. They did their job. It's just the writers didn't. And overall, what I feel that did is it insulted us. It insulted the fans, the comic book fans, comic book readers, and us as an audience more than any of the other things in the movies. The other problem I had kind of early on is, again, I like Tom Hardy. I like his acting a lot. I thought he'd do just fine for the movie since they had to change it from the Spider-Man universe. But again, the writing, it ruined what he could do, what he could play with. He's supposed to be one of these top rebellious kind of journalists. That doesn't mean an idiot. That still means he's analytical. He just takes bigger risks and doesn't care to get into controversy. And he showed that part. But what he mentioned, like in the elevator or something, they were talking about the Venom symbiote, and he's like, alien, like E.T. phone home. That just put down his character, not just that time, but throughout the movie. In the comics, Eddie Brock, first of all, none of this is shown in the movie, had a terrible connection with his father. His father was wealthy, successful, and Eddie Brock always wanted to go up to that level. Check out my video on the psychology of Venom to learn more about that. But that's why he became a bodybuilder. That's why he became such a good journalist. He became awesome at everything he did because he wanted to impress him. He's actually quite a well-rounded person as far as physically, again, and intellectually, intelligently, and also by wisdom from what he has experienced to a certain degree. Now, back to the CGI. The CGI wasn't that bad. At moments, it was For example, when the symbiote went into the older Asian lady, or I think the younger one first, and it gave her the bladed arm, like you'd see with, again, Terminator 2 with the T-1000. But the graphics of it, the quality looked about on par with the bladed arm of the T-1000 and the T-1000 overall look. But then the other scenes with the Venom and the face and stuff, really good. They look sharp. They will look well. Where you see Eddie Brock's face in it, that's not blended to the best for my realistic perception. But overall, it's good. I was afraid that the CGI fest would really occur when he was fighting Riot, the other symbiote, as they chose a character and the symbiote that looks so similar to Venom. And there are other symbiotes they could have chosen to where you could see the difference clearly, who's who when they're fighting, especially when they're all mixing into each other. But it wasn't overall that bad. And it wasn't that all the time like with Transformers. And for example, you can see where it's well addressed in the movie, where you see the kind of goo, the symbiote in the lab, especially that yellow one, which would be Scream, moving about and clinging itself to the surface, which was pretty cool, not quite like the comic. And again, there's so much filtering in the movie. There's so many CGI and like kind of bloom effects and darkness, too much camera effects going on that also cheapen the movie. She-Venom did appear. Brock's lady being assimilated with the Venom symbiote, that was pretty cool, and she looked totally awesome, and I think a lot of people kind of agree with it, and very much similar to what you'd see in the comic book. One of the other parts where I started to disconnect with the movie was the ending, where they're sitting on the steps to her place, and they're talking, and the conversation's just so weird, and the camera action, again, my opinions might change about the movie, but right now what I remember that scene of their conversation was just... And so that kind of leads us to the ending of the movie where the big reveal is made. By now you probably know what the spoiler is, and that's with Carnage. Woody Harrelson? Yeah, so I'll put his picture here anyway. And when I saw his face, I was excited. It was really cool because Woody's kind of a little bit aged face, and his quality acting, oh, that was so awesome, with one big, cringy, terrible part to his design, and that was the hair. That's how you knew it's Carnage, by the way. It looks so fake, so ridiculous, and they just wanted to make it so obvious that it's him. I tone it down. I hope once that movie is released that they do change that hair. That aside, I'm certainly excited to seeing him and his interaction with Eddie Brock. That made me smile at the end of the film and forget a lot of the crappiness that happened within that I wish didn't. Would I say that the movie is so bad that it's good? I'd say it's on the brink of that. I'd say for some people, sure. But for me, it's a little bit more than that. I'd love to see it again. I don't know what it is. There's something that pulls me there. It must be that symbiotic connection. And also, I'm glad that Carnage was not in the first movie. We need a warm-up movie first before we get to the big stuff. Let me know what you think about Carnage. Let me know about what you think about everything talked about and your whole opinions.